There is a difference between meeting someone and being truly connected to them. You can meet hundreds of people in your lifetime. You can feel attraction, excitement, chemistry, even a sense of familiarity. But sometimes one person enters your life and something feels different, not necessarily because everything becomes easy, but because the connection begins to reveal something deeper within you. When people hear the word destined, they often imagine that two people will automatically find each other, fall in love, and live without difficulties. But life does not work that way. A meaningful connection is not always the easiest one. Sometimes it challenges you. Sometimes it forces you to grow. Sometimes it teaches you patience, honesty, boundaries, and self-respect. So, what is the one thing that repeatedly happens when two people are truly meant to build something together? They continue to choose each other through growth, not just through emotion. Feelings can bring two people together, but conscious choice is what allows them to remain connected when life becomes uncomfortable, when misunderstandings appear, when both people change, when circumstances become difficult. There is still an effort to understand rather than immediately escape. That is not fantasy. That is maturity. And there are 5 important signs that reveal this kind of connection. When two people share a meaningful connection, communication becomes more than simply talking. It becomes the bridge that allows 2 different minds, 2 different histories, and 2 different emotional worlds to understand one another. No matter how strong the attraction is, there will be moments when one person misunderstands the other. Feelings get hurt, expectations are not met, or silence creates distance. The important thing is not whether conflict happens. The important thing is whether both people are willing to return to the conversation with honesty. Many people believe that a strong relationship is one where two people rarely disagree. But disagreement is not necessarily a sign that something is wrong. Sometimes disagreement simply reveals that two people are different. The real test comes when emotions become intense. Do you immediately attack? Do you disappear? Do you try to punish the other person with silence? Or do you eventually become calm enough to understand what actually happened? A meaningful connection creates a willingness to repair, even when pride says, "Let them come to me." Something deeper says, "I don't want this misunderstanding to remain between us." That does not mean constantly chasing someone who refuses to communicate. It means recognizing the value of honest conversation when both people are willing to participate. Communication also requires listening. Many people listen only to prepare their response. They are waiting for their turn to defend themselves, explain themselves, or prove that they are right. But real listening is different. Real listening means temporarily putting your own interpretation aside and trying to understand the experience of the other person. You might say, "I didn't mean to hurt you," and still recognize that they were hurt. You might disagree with their interpretation while still respecting their feelings. This is emotional maturity. You don't have to agree with every feeling to take another person's experience seriously. Honest communication also means expressing needs before resentment grows. Instead of expecting someone to read your mind, you learn to say what you need. Instead of silently collecting disappointments, you speak while there is still room for understanding. Instead of using indirect behavior to test whether someone cares, you become courageous enough to ask. There is also a quiet form of honesty that many people overlook. Admitting when you are wrong. Saying, I was wrong. I misunderstood you, or I could have handled that better, does not make you weak. It shows that your ego is not more important than the connection. When two people develop this kind of communication, conflict becomes less frightening. Problems can be discussed instead of hidden. Emotions can be expressed instead of weaponized. Mistakes can become lessons instead of permanent evidence against each other. The relationship becomes a place where truth can be spoken without the constant fear that one difficult conversation will destroy everything. And sometimes honest communication means saying something uncomfortable. It means setting a boundary. It means telling someone that their behavior affected you. It means admitting that you are afraid, confused, disappointed, or uncertain. It means removing the mask and allowing another person to see what is actually happening inside you. This requires courage because vulnerability creates the possibility of rejection. But without vulnerability, there can be no deep understanding. Two people can spend years together while remaining strangers if they never reveal what they genuinely think and feel. The strongest connections are not built by avoiding difficult conversations. They are built by learning how to have those conversations without destroying each other. When both people can return to the truth after emotion has settled, they create something far more valuable than temporary harmony. They create trust. A meaningful connection does not require two people to remain exactly as they were when they first met. Human beings are constantly changing. Your understanding of yourself changes. Your goals become clearer. Your priorities shift. Experiences teach you lessons that you could not have understood before. A healthy relationship makes space for this natural process instead of treating change as a threat. Many people confuse love with control. They believe that if someone truly loves them, that person should behave according to their expectations. They want to decide how the other person should dress, who they should talk to, what they should pursue, and how they should spend their time. But control does not create security. It creates fear. When someone has to constantly modify themselves to avoid upsetting their partner, the relationship slowly becomes a place where authenticity disappears. Real connection works differently. It says, I want to know who you are becoming, rather than I need you to remain who you were when I met you. This requires maturity because growth can sometimes be uncomfortable. Your partner may discover a new ambition. They may become more confident. They may develop interests that are different from yours. Instead of immediately feeling threatened, you can become curious about their transformation. At the same time, personal growth does not mean ignoring the relationship. There must be balance. Two people can pursue individual goals while still making conscious space for each other. You can have your own identity, friendships, interests, and ambitions while remaining emotionally connected. In fact, maintaining individuality can make a relationship stronger because neither person is depending on the other to provide an entire sense of identity. A strong connection also encourages accountability. Sometimes growth means recognizing uncomfortable patterns within yourself. Maybe you become defensive during disagreements. Maybe you avoid difficult conversations. Maybe you constantly seek reassurance. Maybe you become controlling when you feel insecure. A healthy partner does not simply attack you for these behaviors. They can bring them to your attention and encourage you to become more aware of yourself. But growth must remain a choice. You cannot force another person to become emotionally mature. You can communicate your needs, establish boundaries, and express what you expect from a healthy relationship, but the other person must decide whether they are willing to grow. This is where respect becomes essential. Respect means allowing another person to make choices, even when those choices are different from what you would choose. It means supporting their development without trying to possess it. You can encourage someone without controlling them. You can care deeply without becoming responsible for every decision they make. Sometimes two people grow in different directions. This is also part of reality. Love does not guarantee that two people will always remain compatible. A healthy relationship requires both people to honestly examine whether their paths can continue together. When both people are committed to growth, however, the relationship can become a place of expansion rather than restriction. Instead of asking, "How do I keep this person from changing?" the deeper question becomes, "How can we continue becoming better while respecting who we are today?" That mindset creates room for patience, learning, independence, and mutual respect. It allows two people to stand beside each other without needing to stand on top of each other. Anyone can enjoy a relationship when everything is easy. When there is laughter, attention, affection, successful days, and exciting experiences, it is natural for two people to feel connected. But life does not remain comfortable forever. Every person eventually faces stress, disappointment, uncertainty, financial pressure, personal struggles, or unexpected changes. These moments reveal something that romantic words often cannot. How two people actually treat each other when life becomes difficult. A meaningful connection is not measured only by how beautifully two people behave when they are happy. It is also revealed by what happens when they are frustrated. When emotions become intense, do they immediately turn against each other, or do they remember that they are facing a difficult situation together? This distinction matters because conflict can either create greater understanding or slowly destroy trust. When problems appear, immature relationships often become a competition. One person says, "This is your fault," and the other responds by defending themselves. Soon, the original problem disappears beneath accusations, resentment, and old mistakes. Instead of solving what is happening now, both people begin collecting evidence against each other. A healthier connection approaches difficulty differently. The question becomes, what are we dealing with? And how can we handle it? This does not mean ignoring someone's mistakes or pretending everything is fine. It means separating the person from the problem. You can disagree with someone's behavior without treating them as your enemy. Difficult moments also reveal whether commitment is based on convenience. Some people are present only when they are receiving attention, affection, or emotional comfort. When circumstances become inconvenient, they suddenly disappear. Others remain willing to communicate, support, and find practical solutions even when the situation is uncomfortable. This does not mean staying in every relationship regardless of what happens. Commitment should never be confused with tolerating abuse, manipulation, humiliation, or repeated disrespect. There are situations where creating distance is necessary. A healthy bond can survive difficulties, but it should not require either person to sacrifice their dignity or safety. Sometimes challenges actually reveal qualities that were hidden during peaceful times. You may discover that someone is patient under pressure, willing to listen when emotions are high, or capable of taking responsibility when they make a mistake. You may also discover these qualities within yourself. Hard moments can teach you whether you know how to remain calm, communicate clearly, and respond instead of reacting impulsively. There is also something powerful about facing uncertainty together. When neither person knows exactly what will happen next, they can still choose to be honest. They can say, "I am afraid," instead of pretending to have all the answers. They can admit, "I don't know how to solve this yet," while remaining willing to search for a solution. The strongest form of commitment is not the promise that life will always be easy. It is the willingness to face reality without immediately abandoning respect, honesty, and responsibility. When two people can move through difficult seasons without turning every challenge into a reason to destroy each other, they begin to understand what their connection is truly capable of enduring. Attraction can be powerful. It can make you think about someone constantly, become excited when they appear, and feel as though everything around you becomes more intense. But attraction alone cannot tell you whether a connection is healthy. Chemistry can create excitement, yet excitement and peace are not always the same thing. Sometimes the strongest feelings come from uncertainty, inconsistency, or the fear of losing someone, rather than from genuine emotional connection. A meaningful relationship often carries a different quality beneath the attraction. There is a sense that you can breathe around the other person. You do not constantly feel that you must perform, impress, or prove your worth. You can speak naturally, You can admit that you are tired. You can have an imperfect day. You can disagree without immediately believing that the entire relationship is about to disappear. This kind of peace does not mean that everything is always calm. Every relationship has misunderstandings, emotional moments, and difficult conversations. Peace means that beneath those moments, there is a foundation of trust and respect. You may be upset, but you do not feel that you have to manipulate the other person to receive attention. You may need space, but you do not use silence as punishment. You may disagree, but you still recognize each other's humanity. One of the clearest signs of emotional instability is constantly wondering where you stand. When someone's behavior changes from warm to distant without explanation, your mind can become consumed with questions. You begin analyzing messages, waiting for replies, and searching for hidden meanings in ordinary actions. This can create intense emotions, but intensity should not automatically be mistaken for love. Peace allows you to remain connected to yourself. You continue to care about your own goals, responsibilities, friendships, and personal growth. You do not abandon your identity simply because you have feelings for someone. Instead of becoming completely dependent on another person's attention, you maintain an inner foundation that belongs to you. A healthy connection also allows vulnerability without humiliation. You can share something personal without fearing that it will later be used against you. You can express a need without being mocked for having it. You can admit insecurity without someone deliberately increasing that insecurity to gain control over you. There is also peace in consistency. You know that someone's words and actions generally align. They do not need to make dramatic promises every day because their behavior communicates their intentions. You can trust patterns more than temporary emotional declarations. This does not mean a healthy relationship will never create anxiety. Human beings have fears, past experiences, and moments of insecurity. But the relationship itself should not constantly manufacture uncertainty. A supportive connection helps you become more grounded rather than keeping you emotionally dependent on constant reassurance. When attraction exists alongside respect, consistency, freedom, and emotional safety, the relationship begins to feel different. You are not simply drawn toward the person because they make your emotions intense. You are drawn toward them because being around them allows you to experience connection without constantly losing yourself in the process. Choosing someone is different from needing someone. Need can come from fear, loneliness, insecurity, or the belief that your life has no meaning without another person. Choice comes from awareness. It means you know who you are, you understand what you value, and you still decide that sharing your life with another person is something you genuinely want. In a healthy connection, two people do not constantly hold on to each other because they are terrified of being alone. They remain connected because they recognize the value of what they are building together. There is freedom within the relationship because neither person has to completely surrender their identity to prove their love. This is important because many people slowly disappear inside relationships. They stop pursuing their interests. They distance themselves from friends. They abandon personal goals. They begin measuring their worth through another person's attention. Eventually, they may not even recognize the person they were before the relationship. Love should not require that kind of disappearance. You can deeply care about someone while maintaining your own identity. You can have your own ambitions, opinions, routines, interests, and boundaries. You can spend time apart without interpreting every moment of independence as rejection. Two people can be emotionally connected without becoming completely dependent on one another. Choosing each other also means choosing respect when emotions are high. It is easy to be loving when everything feels good. The deeper test comes when you are disappointed, angry, or afraid. Do you use the other person's weaknesses against them? Do you intentionally say things that you know will hurt them? Do you threaten to leave simply to gain control? Or do you try to communicate without destroying the trust you have built? Sometimes choosing each other means choosing patience, not endless tolerance for harmful behavior, but the patience to understand that both people are still learning. Nobody enters a relationship knowing exactly how to communicate perfectly. Mistakes will happen. Emotions will sometimes take over. What matters is whether both people are willing to recognize those mistakes and adjust their behavior. There is also strength in being able to say, "I need some time," without turning distance into punishment. Healthy boundaries create space for emotional regulation. They allow people to return to difficult conversations with greater clarity instead of reacting from anger. At the same time, choosing someone should never mean choosing them over your dignity. If a person repeatedly disrespects you, manipulates you, or violates your boundaries, remaining attached does not prove that the relationship is destined. Sometimes self-respect requires recognizing that love alone cannot repair a connection when only one person is willing to change. A mature relationship is therefore not built on the fear of losing each other. It is built on the willingness to keep showing up with honesty, responsibility, and respect. Both people remain free individuals, yet they continue making conscious decisions that protect the connection. They support each other's growth without demanding ownership, and they give each other space without using that space as an excuse to become careless. The deeper form of commitment is not saying, "You belong to me." It is saying, "I respect who you are, I know who I am, and I consciously choose to walk beside you." Maybe you have spent a long time wondering whether someone is truly meant for you. Maybe you have looked for signs, coincidences, messages, chemistry, or some mysterious feeling that could finally give you an answer. But perhaps the answer is much simpler. You do not have to chase destiny. You have to observe reality. Look at how two people communicate when they misunderstand each other. Look at whether they can speak honestly without destroying one another. Look at whether they allow each other to grow instead of trying to control each other. Look at what happens when life becomes difficult. Look at whether there is peace beneath the attraction. And look at whether both people can choose each other without losing themselves, because a meaningful connection is not proven by how intensely two people feel in one beautiful moment. It is revealed through what they consistently do. Feelings can change, circumstances can change, people can change. But when two people genuinely value what they are building, they make room for growth. They communicate, they repair, they learn, they take responsibility, they respect boundaries, they continue choosing one another freely. And this is why you should never become obsessed with the question, are we destined to be together? Ask something deeper. Are we creating something worth staying for? Because destiny should never be an excuse to tolerate disrespect. Love should never require you to abandon your identity. And connection should never demand that you lose your peace just to keep someone close. If someone is truly capable of walking beside you, you will not have to become less of yourself to make the relationship work. You will become more honest, more grounded, more courageous, more aware. And they will be growing too. Perhaps that is the real sign, not that you cannot live without each other, but that you can stand independently and still consciously choose to walk together. So stop chasing signs. Stop forcing connections. Stop trying to convince someone to recognize your value. Build yourself.